Welcome back, everybody. The city of Sterling Heights is looking to jumpstart its blight problem. The main culprit, empty strip malls across the city. The city recently approved an ordinance that creates neighborhood and district nodes. Essentially, the zones will clear the way for different types of businesses to allow them to open in the empty strip malls, from golf simulators to restaurants, even supermarkets and gyms. I've got the city manager, Mark Vanderpool, and the city planner, Jake Parcell, both here in the Nook in our new studio. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. I guess I'm going to kind of start at the beginning. This blight issue, it kind of plagues every city. You know, it happens over time. But how do we get to that point where we find that we have so many vacancies that we just don't know how to solve the problem?
Yeah, so blight is a common word people use, but it's a little misleading here.
Sure.
We don't have things that aren't well kept up, but we're noticing trends nationally and statewide that have been really concerning. Mid-sized pharmacies, different types of larger supermarkets, retailers, 30,000 square feet down to 10,000 square feet are going dark.
Yep.
And we have to be proactive to find a solution for that. So what we wanted to do is kind of open up all of our tools in the playbook to find new uses that people can put into their strip malls if they're experiencing these vacancies without having them linger for a year or two. And that way we can help revitalize some of these corners. So we're working to do that through this tool.
So when you say that, we don't have to say names. When you're talking about pharmacies that'll go away, or the grocery stores that might downsize or move someplace else, and when they leave, there's a giant hole in the strip mall. So it sounds like, Mark, that what you've done is essentially try to cut some of the red tape so you can get more businesses better opportunities to move into these spaces.
I think that's a fair assessment. And as Dr. Parcell said, we really don't have a true blight problem in Sterling Heights.
It looks that way, though. Nothing against the city, right? Because it happens in every single city. But when you start to see, things close down, you think,
and
it
you're
doesn't
right.
look exactly.
I think your assessment is spot on. When you get a major anchor, a grocery store, you get a pharmacy or the like that closes, it in these mini commercial centers, it does tend to suck the life out of that.
Right.
So that's something we have to be very proactive and cognizant of, and master plan through that. You know, we can't control every changing market condition. We can't predict when Rite Aids and CVS's are going to close, but what we can do is make it as user-friendly as possible for adaptive reuses, and that's what we're doing through our master plan.
So how do you do that then? How do you make it user-friendly? What does that mean in terms of moving a business in?
Yeah, so in these select areas in the city, we're allowing more uses now than anywhere else through the overlay district. And the biggest one is that we're allowing for administrative parking reductions. So we're doing an active parking study right now. We're seeing how large these parking lots are that are going underutilized because the ordinance was drafted 30 years ago. And now we're allowing for new development in the parking lots to eat up this space that's being unutilized, bring in new tenants, or to bring in a new use that has a different parking requirement without seeking a variance from one of our boards.
Okay, so I'm thinking in terms of real life situations. My daughter dances at Gotta Dance, Shaner and Hall Road there, and brand new apartment complex went up in a parking lot that 95% of the time, none of those spaces were used. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
100%. You know, we're looking at how to more efficiently use this space, whether it's bringing in plazas and green space, benches, amenities, and patios for people, or if it's building new buildings out or fitting in new buildings that we can give some administrative flexibility for.
And I will say that is a great example. And we have
got pushback on that, though.
We
were not happy with you about it.
We did, but when you drive by it now, you see it. The parking lot is jam-packed. The church is adding on. The vacancy rate has declined significantly. That corner is very vibrant now. And we have many other examples like that across the city. We have another development forthcoming, similar concept, on Van Dyke. We have another one on Van Dyke just south of 15 Mile Road that's coming. So that's a creative way to revitalize these areas, and it's working. You can drive through the city and see many examples of this.
So how do you then do all of this with the rising costs of property taxes, of rent, if these are going to be leased out, to commercial properties? when the costs of owning a business are so astronomical now, how do you then convince people to move in when it's going to be a lot more expensive than it was 20 years ago when the last place opened up?
Well, those are conditions we can't control.
Right. You have no control over the market.
We can't control
right?
interest rates, but what we can do is make the community, make our commercial areas as desirable as possible so that businesses, the return on investment, it's easier to achieve in our city than perhaps somewhere else. Now let me say that it's just a teeny piece of the puzzle, this revision or master plan. It's very complex. You have to have really vibrant residential areas. You have to have vibrant, in our case, we have this amazing industrial corridor that goes through our city. We have 70,000 jobs. So it's a vibrant community, and when you create synergy tends to grow. So
those master plans are hundreds, if not thousands, of pages long. Sometimes.
Oh yeah, they
They're
are
daunting for us.
But they work. They do work. I mean, look at Lakeside. If we didn't develop the plan that we now have for Lakeside, that mall would be, talk about sucking the life out of an area, that whole region. That would have happened. That could have been vacant for decades. We've seen examples of this across the country. But our master planning process that we started 10 years ago yielded this amazing development that's forthcoming with demos starting shortly. That's an amazing development that's creating synergy that's going to have, there's already speculative development going on around it.
I've heard the word synergy multiple times at this point, and I am curious, and I've never really thought about it from the city's perspective, especially planning. Is it your job to find ways to not only attract people to come to these businesses, but also just make it easy to get to them? Because just driving there without a problem is half the battle.
Yeah, 100%. And so our master plan is only 375
Okay.
pages, so pretty digestible. But that's our whole job. So our emphasis on our node chapter was all about walkability, green space, and connectivity. So how can people get to their
Which
houses?
are kind of buzzwords right now, but they actually work, don't they?
They work 100%. But our city is about 74% single-family homes. So how do we connect those neighborhoods and the people who live in the city to these commercial corners? And it's a big emphasis on public-private partnerships. So we have different strategies for the neighborhood and the district nodes, including facade renovation, including public right-of-way improvements, benches, seating, bus stop work. So it's a public-private partnership that we're seeking to strive for, bringing in the county, bringing in transit providers, and then helping provide this for the residents. And then on the tail end, just helping to advertise the businesses that come in and give them a platform to be successful in the city.
Producer Mary is giving me a wrap, but I have to ask you one more question, Mark. On the Lakeside front of things, what's the timeline there? Because I thought we would see some progress, but not yet, and maybe my timeline is just off in my mind.
Well, it's very complicated. As you know, when you heard Mayor Duggan's State of the City, there is state legislation that is required to clear the last hurdle with respect to the transformational brownfield plan.
Okay.
So that legislation has been prepared. It's ready to be introduced. There's bipartisan support. So once that legislation is introduced and the transformational brownfield cap increases, then we can proceed to demo. So the developer's expecting Q1 of 2026 for demo work.
Gotcha. Okay.
Then you'll see the actual construction
So we'll see some
rising out
bulldozers.
of the earth.
Can I drive one of the bulldozers?
I would love to. We both could.
Deal.
We
I
both
grew up on that mall, so I have to have the opportunity. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the work. And to help explain the process behind all is fascinating to me, because I don't think people realize what you have to do to try to figure out how to replace a CVS or a Rite Aid. So, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to take a live look at this.